And welcome to this, the very first episode of Dead Last, the new series that was supposed to debut back in June for the anniversary, but some technical difficulties led to it being delayed, and we had to reshoot it, and there's a whole bunch of things that made it so that people just obviously wanted to push this back a little bit further. So here we are at the second go-round, and this is the series where we rank horror franchises from dead last all the way down to the very best. And just kick it all off, we're doing the series that I started my channel off with. We're doing the Friday the 13th series. I have a special guest on my lap in the Lord Scotty, and I actually have some other special guests to help me rank these movies. So let me introduce you to them. We have the Movie Timeline's wife. We have Christy down here in the corner. Christy, if you don't know, is my wife, and also a costume designer for movies and television. She just did Westworld, which was pretty cool, right?
I worked on Westworld. I was not the costume designer.
Yeah, but still, it's pretty exciting stuff. We also have mask designer and makeup man Mikey Rotella up there. Mikey is actually currently, well, after the quarantine ending, Mikey's working on The Walking Dead. Is that correct?
Yeah, Walking Dead right now. Season 11.
What? Jeez.
11 seasons of that show.
Yeah, lot of stuff going on.
And we also have Derek Reynolds, who is the host of Halloween Shindig and the Shindig Radio podcast, which you got to check out.
iTunes, or you can listen to it right from the site at halloweenshindig.com.
So what we've done is all four of us have ranked the Friday the 13th movies, including the 10 regular entries, Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake. So 12 movies in total. We've ranked them from dead last to first, and I've also gotten several of my patrons, and they have given me their rankings from dead last down to first. And what we do is we take those movies and we give them a score. If you've ranked it dead last, it's 12 points. If you rank it first, it's 1 point. The movie with the lowest number of points is the best, and the movie with the highest number of points is, of course, dead last. So, in this episode, the lowest possible score that you could have here would be 11 points. So the highest possible score that you could have is 132 points. So, knowing that, kicking off our list, in dead last place, with 114 points, which is a pretty high number of points, Friday the 13th, Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell. This is what was interesting. This movie's ranked dead last, yet only 2 people ranked it dead last. It's just its overall numbers were lower, and some of the other movies that were ranked dead last more had higher scores to kind of balance it out a little bit more. The highest score that this one had was a 9. 3 people gave it 9th place. I was one of the people that actually gave it 9th place, and Derek, you actually were also one of the people that gave it 9th place.
I was going to say, I think, I was like, did I rank it that high? But I guess I did.
Yeah. Me and you ranked it higher than most other people. Mikey and Christy both gave it 10th place. So, obviously rather low in there, but there were some other movies that they thought were worse. I know for me, I ranked this a little higher than some of the other ones just because, not because I think it's a good movie, because I don't think it's in any way, shape, or form a good movie. But by the point that you got to the 9th movie, I at least appreciated that they did something really different, that they tried something that was out of the box. It was something that you hadn't seen before to kind of give it a little variation other than just like kids go to a cabin in the woods and get hacked up by a killer again. I feel like I sound like I'm praising it, but I'm not.
It's hard to praise that movie, man, and especially it's not just a bad movie, it's a bad Friday the 13th movie.
Yeah.
But I love Creighton Duke, and Creighton Duke almost saves Jason Goes to Hell for me. I pretty much hate everything about that movie except for Creighton Duke, and there's awesome gore from K&B, but it's lame because you're not seeing Jason do it.
Well, Christy can't think of Creighton Duke because whenever she thinks of Creighton Duke, she just thinks about a little girl eating a hot dog in a big and I will also say that I'll give this movie a slightly higher points just for this scene. and I don't know why I love this as much as I do, but where the scene where the main guy, I want to call him Ryan because that's who he is on the TV show, but when he is handcuffed and he like jumps over the handcuffs.
That's a slick move.
I think the biggest mistake was not having Jason through the entire movie. You know, we've talked about that before, where that just, you know, showing what everyone else sees in the mirror would have been a better choice than, you know, showing the character he's supposed to be in glimpses of Jason once in a while. Because you have one of the coolest looking Jasons, I think, in the whole franchise. You know, that's debatable for some people, but for me, you know, I think it's up there. You know, it's got great gore. You know, it's got one of my favorite kills in the uncut version with that tent scene with the, you know, the signpost and all that stuff. Is brutal, you know. So, I mean, it's cool. You know, I just think the whole thing kind of just falls apart, like, you know, over the course of the movie. You know, even the demon stuff and everything is cool, but it's sort of, you're already kind of checked out by that point in the movie, and it can't really save itself, even if there's cool little demon worms running around. I don't know. It just doesn't do it.
Christy, how do you feel?
I think that somehow making it that you would be able to see more Jason would fix the movie. I think Mikey fixed the movie.
Where are you?
She's in a parrot sanctuary.
Are you in a chicken coop?
Can you see this?
No, those are parrots.
You're being stalked.
I know.
No, they're all just staring at me.
That's crazy.
It's really scary. It's actually not.
Tippy Hedren over here.
I know. I actually, the funny thing is I think, again, to defend my 9 rating, I actually feel like I gave this movie a slightly higher ranking just for the first 10 minutes alone, which I think is one of the best, like, introductions to a horror movie, because, like, that whole, like, playing with your expectations of, like, oh, is he behind the mirror now? And then that whole tidbit is great, and up until they blow Jason up, and obviously the movie goes in a different direction, but that first 10-15 minute sequence is just great. All right, so that takes us to number 11. Number 11 with 112 points. So again, there was only 2 points distinguishing this movie and The Dead Last Jason Goes to Hell, is Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Sorry. So 4 people voted this one dead last, and I was included in those 4, because this is the one that I dread watching the most out of all of them.
Really?
Yeah, it is. I hate it. And its highest score was 8th place. 3 people gave it 8th place. Derek, you were one of them, and Christy, you were also one of them as well, too. And Mikey, you gave it 9th place, so a little bit higher than that. But obviously you guys liked this one a little bit more than me. Christy, how do you feel about Jason Takes Manhattan?
It's ridiculous. I don't know how they got it from Camp Crystal Lake to New York on a boat, but they did.
Yeah, well, you know, now magically the lake is connected to the ocean.
Yeah, but I mean,
Tributary.
Yeah.
it's so bad that it was entertaining.
Mikey, how do you feel? Because you ranked this a little lower than Christy did.
It's definitely, I think, the weakest of the straight sequels. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know, because I don't even know if Jason Goes to Hell is an actual sequel. It's just so out of there and weird. But Manhattan, you could basically cut like 75% of the movie out and still have all your best scenes and just watch like a 15-minute little, you know, montage of the cool stuff. There's nothing good in the movie. It's like, you know, it's kids getting on boats in some weird foggy, you know, Vancouver town. Like, it's like, what are we watching here? I don't like any of these kids. You know, there's some fun, goofy on the boat disco nonsense. There's some great shots of you know, Kane Hodder actually in Times Square, which is the, you know, the money shot of the whole movie, if you ask me. Other than that, though, I mean, you don't have much. Worst Jason face reveal of all time. Completely confusing, conceptual, like abstract.
What is that
ending? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't get it. You know what I mean?
It looks like a
It's a cheap
store-bought
Halloween.
Halloween mask. It's so weird.
But then right after they show you the dumbest version of Jason without the mask ever, right when you're thinking, oh, well, I can't get any worse than that, he transforms, like, I don't know, figuratively maybe into a child. I don't know what happens.
It's a confusing thing.
I have actually justified that, as much as I hate this movie, but again, my whole concept of trying to justify continuity, I have justified that in that the only person that sees that is her name Rennie? What the main character girl of that movie? She had been having visions of Jason as the kid, and also she was like forcibly drugged on like heroin or ketamine or whatever they pumped into her.
All those guys.
Yeah. So, and she was the only one that physically saw Jason as a child. So in my mind, in my continuity mind, that whole concept of Jason as a child exists only in her head.
This list was so hard to put together, honestly. I think it's the most solid franchise in horror in terms of sequels, how entertaining they are, how well they kept making a film that kind of worked. And at least for me, the first 8 Paramount 80s Fridays they're their own thing. And I definitely think that Takes Manhattan is the worst of those. Well, that's why I give it an 8. I mean, everything after Takes Manhattan is just kind of like a mishmash of how bad do you think this really is versus something else. But I definitely think the Paramount movies all are better.
And so now we're at number 10. With 101 points is the remake. The Friday the 13th remake from 2009. 3 people voted this dead last. Mikey and Christy were 2 of those 3. The highest score that it got, somebody gave this 6th place. Derek, you ranked it 10th, and I ranked it 11th, so it was pretty close to being dead last for me. 3 people actually voted this a 7, which is actually where this one kind of came in. This one was kind of funny because it's like people either hated this one or thought it was mediocre. Nobody really thought it was that great, but some people thought it was, I guess, better than the rest. But a lot of people, 3 people, thought that it was the absolute worst. Mikey, why did you give this one dead last?
I think the things I might like about it are also some of the things I don't like about it. Like, for instance, trying to jam the first 3 movies into one movie is almost kind of cool because you sort of see this progression of the Jason character. But at the same time, it's like you don't do any real one of those movies justice, and you just sort of like blast through them as quick as you can to get to Jason action. There's no real development of it, honestly. And the gore is mediocre. I feel like if you're giving me, a Millennium slasher movie, or you're at least going to give me some really cool gore and some awesome kills and some stuff I've never seen before. You barely reveal a Jason at the end of the day. As much as he looked cool, you don't get enough of it, really, to me.
Christy, you also gave it dead last. What about the remake for you stuck out as being worse than the others?
I don't see the point of it. I don't think it was needed. And it was really boring. It was really boring. I don't even really remember it, to be honest with you.
In terms of me ranking it higher, like I said, these rankings for me could change on a dime and day to day, honestly. And if you tell me that somebody's like, this is the worst Friday the 13th, I would say absolutely. I think you get more Friday the 13th in Friday the 13th Part 2 than you do in this remake. It's over and done with. They're like, you killed my son, and then it's moving on, which I didn't really like. But it's a dude in a hockey mask, eventually killing people in the woods, and you're not getting that with some other Friday the 13th movie. So if you want to see a guy in a mask killing people in the woods, I think the remake is giving you more of that than Jason X. At any rate,
I've seen this movie 3 times. I saw it the first time that I saw it, like when it came out, on video. I did not go to the theater for this one. I watched it in order to do my Friday the 13th timeline back when I started the channel. That was the only second time I watched it. And then watching it with Christy for this video was the 3rd time I've seen this movie. And that was just a month ago. And right now, I mean, Mikey, you're talking about the kids and the characters. I can't even think of any of them. I can't even picture any of them in my head. Like, I don't know anybody who was in this movie.
That's why it's so easy to rank, because I can't remember any of those people, so I know they suck. I can't remember any of the kills, so that wasn't good. Like,
Well, then that takes us to number 9. Actually, number 9 had one of the. We're going into the big jump in points now. Here's an interesting thing, and this is going to be for, like, basically just to let you know that the difference in points between number 9 and number 5 is only 16 points. So these next bunch of entries are all really close in points. But number 9 with 86 points is Jason X. Jason X, one person had ranked dead last, and that person was Derek. Its highest score. Are you ready for this? Somebody ranked it as their 3rd favorite Friday the 13th movie. So,
What?
from 3rd to 12th. I had this ranked very low. I had it as 10th place. Christy had it very low as well in 11th place. And Mikey, you had this ranked, out of us, the highest. You had it ranked as 8th place. Interesting thing about this movie, the scores were literally all over the place. Somebody had it as 3rd place. Somebody had it as 4th place. Somebody had it as 5th place. Somebody had it as 6th place. It had, I think, with the exception of 1st and 2nd place, it had an entry in every single slot. So this movie is very divisive. But Derek, you really didn't like this one. What is it about Jason X?
It is just the absolute last thing I want in a Friday the 13th movie. I do not want to see this man in space. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to watch a Sci-Fi Channel movie. I don't want to see him battle people with lasers. I don't want to see him interacting with technology. It's the furthest thing to me from what I love about Friday the 13th. And while I don't think it's a terrible movie, and I don't think there's some enjoyables, like, I get it. I get why somebody might say this is better than 8. This is better than Jason Goes to Hell. This is better than the remake. I get it, but for me, it's the furthest thing from what I want.
Christy, you gave this really low too. This was your 2nd to last. So what about Jason X really stuck out to you as being bad?
I mean, you know, watching these movies, part of the fun about them is that they don't always make sense.
Don't always.
They can be silly.
Never. They never make sense.
Jason going to space, I like, it is just so ridiculous. It doesn't feel like a Jason movie to me. It doesn't feel like anything I want to watch. And Derek, like, hit the nail on the head with, like, Sci-Fi Channel, because that's what it felt like. It's like, what is this? Why is this? Why would you even think of this?
You're telling me that your idea of a Friday the 13th movie is not a robot straddling Jason and saying "Giddy up"? Is that what you're saying?
Jason Goes to Space. Like, I don't. That's all you have to say. I don't want to see it. I don't. It wasn't far enough out there that he went to New York. I mean, like, that was far enough. I don't think he needed to travel to space. Like,
Send them everywhere.
It's a victim of its own, like, escalation. Like, that's the problem, is you can't, once you go to Manhattan and hell and, you know, where else do you go? And that's one of the reasons why I actually give it a pass, because it's like a lot of other franchises, like, what the hell else are you going to do? And, you know, Hellraiser did it and Leprechaun did it. And, like, it's like, all right, well, let's go check out space now and see what that's all about. At that point, if you're on the 10th movie and it's that ridiculous, it's like, okay, I'm on board. Let's just do it. Like, all bets are off. Let's see what's up. You get me, you know, Jason in space. You give me some David Cronenberg in the middle.
What is he doing? What is Cronenberg doing there?
I don't know. They're trying to get points wherever they can. You know what I mean? And with me,
People
it totally
think this
works.
is legit. It's got David Cronenberg in it. It's going to be okay.
It works for me. And then he just starts mowing through all these kids, you know, and it does feel goofy, but there are some cool kills that you're never going to get, you know, in
Oh, there are.
on campground, you know what I'm saying? Or even in Manhattan.
The liquid nitrogen scene will always go down as being probably one of the best kills of the series.
That's a good kill, man.
And this is all before he becomes Uber Jason, which is already now that you've made it this far in the movie. It's like, okay, you can, if you can handle this, let's see if you can handle this curveball and how ridiculous this is. And I'm like,
it's so
okay,
much.
here we go. This is ridiculous, but I mean, it's bad. It is bad, but it's still Kane Hodder. I love Kane Hodder. You know what I mean? I feel like, you know, he does a great job. Uber Jason, as ridiculous as it is fun. Some of the throwback things they have to even the rest of the series, like the sleeping bag kill, are my favorite parts of the movie, you know. And even that little hologram, that hologram scene with the sleeping bag is more Friday the 13th than some of the stuff in like 6 or 7 of the movies. You know what I mean?
Remake. You know what I mean? Like, that's a great scene. I like that scene. It's one of the coolest scenes in Jason X.
Well, I'm excited to talk about this next one because this next one for me is actually one that's controversial. But at number 8, and this one was another one that was all over the place with its rankings, with 83 points, so 3 points ahead of Jason X, was Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. So no one gave this one dead last. No one said that this was their dead last movie. The highest score that it got was second place. Somebody liked this as their second favorite. Of the 4 of us, Derek, you had it ranked the highest. You had it in 5th place. Me, Mikey, and Christy all had it ranked at 6th place. I just want to start off by saying that I think this is a much better Friday the 13th movie than people give it credit for. I think because it's not actually Jason, people get all up in arms and they hate it because, oh, it's not Jason, it's just an ambulance driver. It's just like, okay, so cut that part out of the movie and it's an awesome Jason movie. Like, it's actually an excellent Friday the 13th movie.
I'm with you, man. I think it's a solid Friday the 13th. Roy kills so many people, so many more people than Jason at that point. The gore is great. It has a totally like coked out 80s feel to it. Reggie the Reckless.
Reggie the Reckless is a...
I love this movie. I love
steals the movie. And Spider/Demon/whatever you want to call Miguel Nunez in this one. How could you not love a movie that features the great, great sounds of ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby, ooh baby.
It's the most believable relationship in cinema history because he's taking his shit in an outhouse and his girlfriend's just hanging out outside singing with him. I mean, that's love. Christy,
how do you feel about Part 5?
And it doesn't bother me. I know it bothers a lot of people that it's not actually Jason, but that part doesn't bother me. I agree with Derek where it feels more like Jason, a Jason movie, even though it isn't Jason.
That's my favorite Tommy Jarvis, you know what I mean? In the whole series, basically, even more than Corey Feldman. I think that guy's great. I don't know. I think it's one of your best straightforward Friday movies as far as kills and just Jason-y action. Then, of course, it not being Jason is a problem. You know, I don't necessarily like the idea of it being Roy, but I really wish they would have run with that ending, though, with Tommy Jarvis. Like, that, I mean, that would have been awesome.
I hate that he kung fu fights everybody in this movie except the dude he should kung fu fight. Like, I want to see him karate kick and punch Jason or Roy, but he doesn't. He just beats up on other kids and some hillbillies. But I love it. I love Tommy Jarvis just like psycho freaking out on everybody and just like so scared of Jason and his memory that he's just like keyed up and just punching everything. Love it.
I hate those hillbillies though. Oh man.
With the dirt bike.
Yeah, Christy, that should be a reminder for you. This is the one with the hillbillies.
Oh my God, I just want to know where all the dirt. Where's why is she so dirty? There's no dirt around her. There are a lot of good moments in that one.
Oh yeah, Violet's all like pop locking and
oh yeah.
Doing good weird dance. Like 2 Fridays in a row, you get some weird, goofy dancing. I approve.
Good kids, good soundtrack. I mean, yeah.
Overall, a very, I believe, it's too low on this list. It's too low. I think that it should be a little
I totally agree.
But apparently, it's out of our hands. All right, so then that'll take us on to number 7. Number 7 is another movie that I feel is a little bit too low on this list. But number 7 with 71 points is Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. So one person ranked this at dead last. One person said that this was their least favorite Friday movie. The highest score that it got, 2 people ranked it as 3rd place. I was one of them. Mikey, you had this ranked in 5th place. Derek, you had it 6th place, and Christy, you actually had this out of the 4 of us. You had this ranked at the lowest. You had this ranked at number 9. So what was it about this one, the one with the telekinetic girl that you did not like?
I just thought it was a poorly made movie, like in general. Like I don't know if they like ran out of money. I don't know what happened, but
they did.
Even like the thing that I remember most about it was at the end when her dad came out and he still looked the same.
But that actually was studio interference, because there's actually like really crappy YouTube footage of the original bit. He was supposed to come out. They had a version of him that was like a skeleton, and then there was another version where he was just like rotted and he kind of looked like a zombie or whatever like that. But the studio complained and said that that they didn't understand what was happening, and they didn't get that it was supposed to be her dad. So they made him reshoot it with just the actor looking like himself.
You know, I would kill, and I'm sure a lot of other fans would kill to see that uncut director's cut that's out there somewhere, you know, and it's still a really violent movie with a lot of great kills and stuff like that. I don't know about the telekinesis and everything like that. It's kind of a goofball story out of left field, like trying to somehow, pull something new into the franchise somehow. Like, how do we get this guy out of this lake? I don't really get it, but I can forgive because of how much I love that Jason, how much I love Kane Hodder. I love all the kills. It's like super opportunistic. Anything he picks up just becomes a weapon for the whole movie. And then it's just awesome effect after awesome effect, awesome stunt after awesome stunt. And then the reveal of his face is one of the greatest in the whole franchise for me.
So amazing. I do feel the need to defend my number 3 ranking here, and I guess to explain it a little bit, because I will say that this was my first Friday movie. This was the first one that I can recall seeing, and I've seen it multiple times. I will admit that after rewatching it, like, I definitely think I get it. I get why people don't like it as much, because it's a slower pace. It is a little bit boring until it gets to the telekinetic battle at the ending and everything like that. It was kind of fun to see Jason finally face off against somebody that could actually give as good as they got.
This is a movie I'd like to rank higher, because I actually love Part 7, but when I watched the whole series and the kind of, you let that sort of Friday vibe kind of just wash over you. It's not my favorite Jason, but I think he's the best looking Jason in this. He's imposing. He's like soaking wet the whole time. His spine is exposed. His mask is all cracked. I would like to put this a little bit higher, but I do. I pull back and I put the first 5 ahead of it. But after the first 5, this is my favorite.
Okay, so then that brings us to number 6. And here we go. For the first time ever, we have a tie. 2 movies both got 70 points. I want to point out that these 2 movies got 70 points and New Blood got 71 points. So each one of these movies were basically just 1 point away from the next score up. So, tied at 70 points, Freddy vs. Jason and Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. So in the case of a tiebreaker, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to our official tiebreaker for this episode, which is my good friend Jeremy Beitler, who just directed a film called Crossover, which you can check out, I believe, on YouTube. But let's go to him for the winner.
Ooh, a tiebreaker, huh? Okay, between Part 3 or Jason vs. Freddy, I'm going to go with Part 3, and here's why. Yes, Jason vs. Freddy, it looks really cool. They finally meet up. But man, I was bored to tears. Seriously, almost the whole film. Toward the end it gets good. But mostly it felt like a Nightmare on Elm Street film, not a Friday film. So I go with Part 3. Jason gets his iconic mask. And some cheesy fun if you ignore the 3D shots.
So that makes Part 6 with 70 points, Freddy vs. Jason. Well, believe it or not, I think you'll be surprised here. No one ranked this movie dead last. 2 people did vote it in 11th place, and I'm looking at them on this screen right now. Derek and Mikey, you guys both gave it 11th place. Its highest score was that 3 people voted it as their number as number 4, and both Christy and I were 2 of those. So obviously, on this panel, we have some very contrasting opinions of this movie. And in terms of talking about the Jason aspect of it, like, I don't know, the Jason in the cornfield sequence will always forever maybe be one of probably the best Jason sequences that might have ever been put on film. And that stands out as being so strong to me. And oddly enough, even though this feels more like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie in general, like the tone of the film feels more Nightmare, it's Jason's movie. He kills like 90% of the people in the movie. Like, he's the one that kills everybody. Mikey, I know.
mean, maybe in the fact that maybe because he's not as bad as Freddy, he can kind of come out on top. But as far as, like, you know, fans of Jason making this movie, I don't think there are many in the writer's room, considering doesn't really follow much of Jason's past. And at least to me, I thought it was really annoying that he was afraid of water. I thought that was like this, you know, like, really, like, if you got to find a weakness, like, you're like really searching for one.
So I'm gonna defend the Jason and water thing, because I think, like, just plain as you watch it in the movie, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But I can rationalize it in the essence of the only time that you ever see Jason afraid of the water. Like, they never show Jason afraid of the water in the actual film. The only time you see him is in his deep subconscious. And I've kind of, like, intended that to be like, look, he's not actually afraid of the water. It's just Jason found the one thing that's in his mind and his memory as the thing that's actually been, like, something that has hurt him. And, like, that childlike aspect of Jason that's still there was hurt by water. He drowned. He died. And that, I think there's that subconscious memory of that. I got it from that point. Do I think it totally works? No. But I can rationalize it, I guess, in my head.
Yeah, you're right. That scene in the cornfields, the coolest scene they're giving you in that movie. And Jason does, you know, he's on fire. And he's throwing a flaming machete, and he's slashing this kid, slashing that kid. I mean, it's the coolest thing the movie offers. But again, it's so slick. I don't like the whole concept of putting them together to fight.
And I love that cornfield scene also. I think it might be the standalone only scene in the whole movie that I actually enjoy, except the fact that the climax of that scene is a CG machete through the neck or something. Like, some CG thing comes through the fat kid's neck, and I'm like,
yeah, that's the beginning, yeah.
That's how you're going to end this scene? CG fire and machetes flying around.
Well, Christy, you gave it a higher ranking. So what is about this one that you really liked?
I did not expect to like it. Probably out of all of the movies I had, maybe besides Jason Goes to Space, I had, like, the lowest expectations for, and I found it entertaining. I thought it was fun. It made me interested in Freddy, which may be also a sign that it's more of a Freddy movie than a Jason movie. But I just thought it was entertaining. It was different, and, you know, crossovers are normally not something I'd ever want to watch. I just don't think that they're needed ever for any type of movie, but this one worked for me. I don't know. It was fun.
All right, so then the other part of that tiebreaker then, also at 70 points, making it number 5, then is Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. This one, the lowest score that it had was 9th place, so its lowest score was still pretty decent. It had one person give it 2nd place, and that was Derek. I gave it 8th place. Mikey gave it 4th, and Christy gave it 7th. Personally, I enjoy it, but after watching Part 1 and Part 2, especially when you watch them all within a time frame, with the exception of introducing the hockey mask, I really just felt like I was watching the same movie that I'd already just watched twice. Derek, you obviously loved this one a lot more than that. Why is this one so high for you?
Typically, This is a movie that I've just I don't really care about Friday the 13th, so part 3, sort of the way you were saying. But what you just said was when you watch them all in a row, which is what I did the other night just to kind of, put them all fresh in my mind. And I watched 1, 2, 3 right in a row. And I was surprised by how much more I actually liked part 3 than the other 2 movies. And it's something about Jason. This is my favorite Jason. I love the way he looks in this. He's this awkward, like deformed, strange, like all his movements and his mannerisms are weird. He's discombobulated. He's not like, he's threatening, but in like a scary, I don't know what this thing is or what it's gonna do way. And his whole fight with Chris at the end, I absolutely love. And I think it's a lot better than the similar scene from the other 2 movies. I mean, I love that theme, the hot ice theme. The 3D is a little, it's distractingly annoying, which is a thing I used to not like about it. Like they're putting dumb stuff in your face the whole movie. But yeah, I don't know what it was. I was just really feeling part 3 the other night. I was like, man, I gotta at least, I gotta bump it ahead of 2 at any rate. But I get it if somebody doesn't really care for it.
Well, Christy, this was one that in terms of talking about caring for it, that you did not care for as much as the others. Although you had it ranked decently, you had it somewhere in the middle. You had it as number 7. What about 7? What about 7? Do you recall as either liking or not liking?
Which one is this?
This is the one with where they go into town and there's like the gang people that follow them into town and everything.
Oh yeah, you know what? Honestly, this one was so forgettable to me. Obviously. No, I didn't. I didn't like the. Yeah, no. This one was really boring to me.
But Mikey, obviously, this one is one that you like, because you had it ranked as 4th place, pretty close to its official ranking. So, what about this one? Is it for you that you like?
I do like his face off with some of the characters, and even though a lot of those, they have to always add those extra characters, bikers, punks, random hillbillies. Like there's got to be some of that, but it does it in, I guess, a subtle enough way where it's like you're not rolling your eyes and like hating every second of it. I love Shelley. I love that character. He's one of my favorite kids. I think 3 has some of my favorite kids, just in the fact that they're all pretty believable, and then the ultimate scare ending, I think is kind of genius by flipping it with Pamela, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No, that's cool. But it has literally my favorite sequence in any Friday the 13th movie, which is right before his mom comes out for that quick gag, when she wakes up in the boat and looks up at the house, and he is in the window, and he looks the way he looks with the blood on his face, and he's just like smiling and going at the window. It's horrifying. It's the most horrifying thing in a Friday the 13th movie. And then he comes down and he busts through the door and he's just coming at her.
All the movies too have these little snapshots, these iconic images that you remember because they were in Fangoria, or they were like part of the Fangoria like trading card series or something like that. And that axe in the head with the
dude, I love it.
It might be the like quintessential image of Jason, and
it's
maybe it was a play at the 3D thing, at the time, and maybe it worked so much better, at the time in the theater with the glasses on. But I still watch that, and I just that scene is so awesome.
Awesome.
All right, so now we move on to the top 4, and here we go. Another big shock here. We have another tie. 4th place and 3rd place is also a tie, and just to show you our jump in points here. Part 6 and 5th place and 6th place were tied at 70 points. 3rd place and 4th place are tied with 45 points each. So there's a pretty big jump, and obviously these movies both got a lot of really good low ratings here. But they are the original Friday the 13th, the classic one that kicked it all off, and Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, both at 45 points. Once again, I'm going to the tiebreaker. And let's ask Jeremy which of these two that he feels is the better Friday the 13th movie.
Oh, so tiebreaker. Okay, Well, this one is easy for me. So you got part 1. Yes, started the franchise. And then Jason Lives. Look, I know part 1 started the franchise, but not my cup of tea. Kind of boring, really doesn't go anywhere, and mom pops up out of nowhere and is the killer. Anyway, it has some moments, but now, Jason Lives. Come on, zombie Jason. It's where it all starts going crazy. The lightning strike, just everything. And also, I really dug the humor. So, there you go. Jason Lives.
Which means number 4 is the original Friday the 13th with 45 points. Great ranking. It had its lowest score. Somebody did rank it in 10th place. Somebody had it ranked in 10th place. Its highest score that it got, 3 people ranked it as the number 1 movie. Mikey, Christy, and Derek, all 3 of you guys ranked it as the number 1 on this
You're
list.
the only 3, though?
You were the only 3, yes, yeah.
That's weird.
I actually ranked it 7th place. Because I'm not a fan of the original. I know that you kind of have to take a look at it historically, but when you're not looking at it historically, it's a boring movie. Not a lot happens. It takes way too long to get going. You have this sort of murder mystery, and then you're gonna say, "Who done it? Who done it? Who done it?" Oh, this lady. You've never met her before.
Yeah, it's weird. It is weird.
I felt cheated and robbed by that, and it just always knocks it down. I think it is a very well-made movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's hard to call it a bad movie. It's just in terms of a Friday the 13th movie, I just don't find it as interesting as I found some of the others. So it just ranks a little lower to me.
I mean, I rank it number 1 for its historical value, I guess you would say. I mean, it starts the whole thing off. I like that it's his mom. I don't know if I'm like alone in that. And I feel like, isn't it like one of the first slasher films like ever?
There was definitely slasher movies that came before it.
What really sticks with me about the first movie is that atmosphere that it creates. It has this really wooden Northeast camp vibe to it that the other movies, even 2, completely just like falls to the wayside in a way that's kind of sad, I think. It's such a rich, scary location and such a cool horror location, and nothing captures it quite like the first movie. But not notwithstanding, I love Pamela. I love that whole sequence after she's revealed. She's great. She plays it so crazy and so unnerving. But Alice is kind of a letdown. So mostly it's just, I think it's an important movie in the terms of horror and in terms of slash, and I think it has the most atmosphere for me, and I love that atmosphere, that camp.
I just think like that is the most important part of Jason's history. You know what I mean? I loved that as a kid because I'm a certain age to go backwards and find out the true origins of Jason, and that was the biggest problem with people, and that was even the biggest confusion with people who had never seen the original. I mean, they even use it in the Scream movie, that whole joke as like, oh, no, it wasn't Jason, wasn't the killer, that whole thing. I mean, I like the idea of like, what if this never got a franchise? Like, what if there wasn't a part 2 or a part 3? You go back and you see this movie and it fits perfectly in line with all these other kind of cool, late 70s, early 80s vibe movies where it's like, man, that was weird. What was that one about? Oh, is this lady kills everybody on a Friday the 13th because of her son? And I have a connection to it that made the nostalgia factor even heavier because my dad knew Harry Manfredini and he sang in the original movie. So, Harry did the score. So that was always a big thing. I remember being a little kid and knowing that my father worked on this movie, but I wasn't allowed to watch it, and then I was seeing commercials about, part 7 or part 8, and I knew what Jason was, and I finally saw those movies, but I eventually had to go back and see the original you know, and then that's kind of cool, you know, for our generation, is to have Jason and his whole history, you know. It's just cool.
Then that takes us on to number 3 then, which would be the other part of this tie. At also 45 points is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. The lowest rank that this one got, somebody ranked this number 11. So somebody really does not like this movie. The highest score that it got, 3 different people ranked this as their number 1. And I was one of them. Christy, you had this ranked fairly high as well, too. You had this in 3rd place. And Mikey and Derek, you guys both had this in 7th place. I know I had this ranked as my number 1 because for me, this will always kind of be my quintessential Friday movie. I just really think that it is a Friday the 13th movie. It's just about Jason killing kids in the woods. But I think that they took a concept 6 movies in, and just by adding that kind of oddball sense of humor aspect to it, and the fact that it didn't take itself overly seriously, but then it still kind of did.
Isn't this the first time he's like supernatural?
Yep.
Isn't this when they dig him up and he gets
Debatable.
computed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that part. That was my favorite part, that they switched it into that realm. I like the Tommy stuff, you know, the impact that Jason's made on him.
I mean, I totally agree with everything you're saying about Part 6. And I think it's necessary after, you know, fan reaction to Part 5 to kind of go in this direction with it. To me, it feels like Diet Friday the 13th. Like, it's everything you like about Friday the 13th, but palatable and fun and kind of, it's like a Friday the 13th greatest hits. Like, I don't know what's going on in 6, but 6 doesn't really do it for me. I get why it's so popular. I'm not surprised that it's ranked that high on this list. Everybody really seems to like Part 6, but it's just a Friday that just kind of, I mean, I like it, but I don't know.
The biggest problem I have with Part 6 is the departure from comic relief into almost borderline parody. And this is my huge problem with horror in general. Like, I always thought it was fun to laugh at the unintentional camp of horror movies, especially slasher movies. But when you start like specifically purposefully injecting it, it sort of undid the entire genre for me over time, because that's what horror movies became. It was like, and we got to throw this in, and where it's no longer comic relief from how gnarly everything else is with the gore and horror of it, but it's just sort of this kind of like, well, this is all sort of goofy, right? I mean, we're all just kind of giggling at this, right? And as far as Jason, you know, he looks kind of cool. The hockey mask is okay, but he's a little bit goofy with his gloves and his
like the
goofy
belt.
little utility belt. Yeah.
He honestly looks way too clean for having just gotten out of a grave, right? Like, all that shit looks new. It looks like he just bought it at REI and he's just like stomping around through the ground. It's like, dude, didn't you just come out of a grave? Like, I don't know.
I'm going to pause for a second. Chris, is she okay?
Yeah, this is her contribution to the
Oh, okay.
Is that Jason?
session. She just ran this over.
That's
Maybe
important stuff.
who is this? Oh, it's Stella Bibu? Oh, it's her. It's a self-portrait.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Okay, here we are now, the final 2. So number 2, with no more ties here. Actually, number 2 by nature, with 40 points, is Friday the 13th Part 2. That's right, the original sequel, the lowest score that it got. Somebody ranked it number 7. That was the lowest that it got. Was 7th place. The highest score that it got, somebody did rank it as number 1. They did have a number 1 in there. I ranked it number 5. Christy, you ranked it 5th as well. Mikey, you ranked it number 2, which is where it's slotted. And Derek, you had it ranked number 3.
Like, now that we're talking about it, I feel like I should have ranked it higher.
Yeah.
Because
Well-
I don't like it. I mean, besides the beginning, I don't like the beginning. When he goes...
With Alice? When he goes back and gets Alice?
Yeah, that felt kind of weird.
Well, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, there's no way to logically parse how that happens.
But I don't remember the girl's name, but I did like the final girl. They just kind of sort of like mentioned, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, at the bar where she's just like, yeah, I'm a psychology major. And then at the ending, like, she knows to act like his mom. You know what I mean? I liked how it wasn't just like in your face.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot to love. There's a lot to love in there. I mean, you got the guy. I know I'm gonna mess his name up, but is it Ted? Is Ted the guy that decides to stick around at the bar and ends up saving his own life just because he didn't feel like leaving the bar?
Yeah. I honestly think it's a much more solid horror film that's much better made than the original. Like I said, Ginny's a great final girl. Her battle with Jason's great. I like Jason's look with the burlap sack, as completely lifted as that element is. And many elements in this movie are kind of lifted from other horror movies, maybe making it so successful in its presentation. But I mean, I love part 2. If it's your favorite Friday, I totally get it.
Yeah, I think the reason 1 and 2 are so high on my list is a nostalgia thing, but also, you know, I think they need to be kind of recognized because I think they're good horror movies. And if they didn't have all this Jason behind them, if let's say, again, you know, not to keep bringing this up, but let's say 2 was the last Friday the 13th. I mean, they would be this perfect little pair of movies, but it's just really real. It's a real horror movie. You know, I think it's really scary. They go, you know, pretty heavy with some elements like her urinating under the bed and stuff like that. That used to scare the shit out of me. And then the visual of Pamela Voorhees' head is pretty gnarly, you know, and you always kind of remember that. And then, of course, the vision of his altar to her later in the movie is like, you know, that's pretty awesome. Just straight horror goodness, you know.
Speaking of being up there on the list, we are now at number 1. So the number 1 movie, I guess by process of elimination, you should be able to figure this out. But it actually won by a pretty strong margin. It actually only had 23 points. So it's a pretty low ranking. Pretty low number to be hitting. And that movie is Friday the 13th, Part 4, The Final Chapter. The lowest rank that this movie had was 4th place. 2 people ranked it as 4th place. Derek, you were one of those 2. The highest rank that it had, 4 people ranked it in 1st place. None of us ranked it 1st place, but 4 people did rank it at 1st. I ranked it as 2nd place. Christy, you also had it ranked as 2nd place, and Mike, you had it ranked as 3rd. So all 4 of us thought very highly of this movie. So none of us ranked it anywhere out of a 4. And obviously, this is a very well-loved movie because nobody on this list gave it higher than 4th place. So obviously there's a lot to love here. Derek, you gave this one a 4, which...
I can't believe I ranked this the lowest out of everybody. I love Friday the 13th Part 4. And I'm the lowest guy at 4th place. That's crazy. It's got great gore. You got Corey Feldman, Crispin Glover. The kids are great. It really, I mean, you could argue, I think, that Part 3 really is the first like Friday the 13th movie moving forward, and this just kind of amps that vibe up 100% and gives you what I think everybody really wants in a Friday the 13th movie. But to me, it takes it a bit out of the woods. It puts it in these houses. But again, if this is your favorite Friday the 13th movie, I totally understand because this movie rules.
I want to slightly correct you there, though, because you said as a plus for this movie that it has Crispin Glover, but I think what you meant to say was it has Crispin Glover dancing. I think that's what you had meant to say.
I can completely understand it as a number 1. I feel like most people that are fans of this whole franchise are fans of this sort of an 80s vibe of slasher movies and stuff, and I think this is the one that really brings it into the 80s. And I know they're all technically 80s, but there's something about early 80s movies that feel a little late 70s, and then all of a sudden mid 80s it just becomes 80s. And I love that, and I love the return of Savini. You have some of the best, you know, makeup effects in the whole franchise. I love Tommy Jarvis, that character.
So let me interject here because I need to ask this question, and I know that this is the 2nd time that we've had to shoot this video, and I asked this in the first time we did it because to me this is an important question. And Rob gets killed in the basement of the house, and as Jason is stabbing him to death, he is screaming, "He's killing me! He's killing me!" Now my question to you guys is that silly or is it really disturbing? Because I am completely creeped out by that.
I'm with you, man. I think that's a weird thing to say, but it makes sense. Like, I feel like it's what I would say if somebody was. I'd be like, he's stabbing me. Like, I would just be very obvious about it. So I do think it's creepy. It freaks me out.
I think it's one of those things where, like, you kind of chuckle at the beginning because it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you're like, but it is terrifying. I did want to bring up, I thought one of the most interesting things that we talked about when we talked about it the first time, and Mikey, I know you mentioned it, was just how much everybody liked the introduction of Tommy as the character and how he's in the masks and cool things like that. I don't know. I like that part of the conversation.
I mean, that was me pretty much. You know what I mean? Like I think a whole generation of kids saw themselves in Tommy Jarvis' shoes. You know, they were like, oh man, he's like making masks and he's reading Fangoria magazine and he's into
I'd say he's,
you know what I mean?
Making masks. He's got like a fully functioning fiberglass underskull for an animatronic. Like, what kid is producing this level of quality special effects? It's like completely unrealistic. I love it. I'm not complaining about it.
And I think one thing we got to talk about when we talk about this movie too is the fact that it was supposed to be the final chapter, and I will always love the fact that they took your villain, they took a machete, they jammed it into his face, and then have him fall onto the machete, pushing it even further into his face. It was the best way to just be like, look, he's dead. He's dead. Well, so that's our list. Let's recap that really quick here. So, first place, number 1, part 4, the final chapter. Very, very deserving of that spot. Number 2, part 2. Baghead Jason taking number 2. Number 3 and 4 were a tie, but ultimately Friday the 13th, part 6, Jason Lives took the 3rd place spot, whereas the original film took the 4th place spot. We had another tie again. That was the tiebreaker was given, and number 5 ended up being Friday the 13th, part 3 in 3D, and number 6 was Freddy vs. Jason. Number 7 was Friday the 13th, part 7 took spot 7. Number 8 was Friday the 13th, part 5, A New Beginning. Number 9, Jason X. Number 10, the remake. Number 11, Jason Takes Manhattan, and finally, in dead last, Jason Goes to Hell. That's the list. If you agree with it or don't agree with it, I want to hear about it. You can put the answers down below in the comments of what you thought and which you think is the best or which ones you think would be dead last. If you completely disagree and you want to have a hand in future episodes that you can kind of give your ranking, just go to patreon.com/movietimelines, become a patron of the channel, because the patrons are allowed to vote and contribute to the dead last rankings. So you can do so. I do want to thank my guests. I want to thank Christy. I want to thank Mikey, and I want to thank Derek for helping us out here with giving us your lists as well, and for giving us your insights as to where these movies are. And we'll hopefully see you guys in some future installments. I know you'll be a part of our next installment, which will be the ranking of the the ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. A video that we've actually already shot, so there won't be any delays, guys. That one will actually be coming out, so it's in the can. But I want to thank you guys. So let me know down below. Give them the comments. Do the whole liking, subscribing, do all that good stuff. Check out the patrons here. These patrons do contribute to the channel, and even if they didn't give a ranking, they have contributed to help this channel keep going. And that's about it. Thank you very much for watching this video, and we'll see you very shortly for another one. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.